Today we're going to be taking a look at the walking spider tank of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Onager Dunecrawler. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. We've been continuing through the Adeptus Mechanicus Codex, unit by unit and datasheet by datasheet, and today it's the turn of the disturbing spider walker to be put onto the microscope. In the video we'll take a look at its datasheet, any obvious rules, buffs and synergies that we can see for it on the table, and personally how I would run them in the game at the moment. At present these guys cost £45 from Games Workshop, and if you live in the UK, there's a link in the video description where you can buy one for £38.25 from Element Games. In the background, the Onager Dunecrawler is an Imperial combat walker utilised exclusively by the Skitarii legions of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Heavily armed and armoured, they often form the role of main battle tanks in the Skitarii line, where their slow clambering legs mean that they're a little bit less manoeuvrable than similar tanks of their calibre, but are far better able to traverse broken terrain. In battle they are piloted by two Skitarii, a vanguard who is immersed in an amniotic fluid tank, and whose life force is slowly consumed by the machine's voracious machine spirit. Life is cheap, however, and vanguard are easily replaced, their devotion to the machine god eclipsing any feelings of self-preservation. A Skitarii ranger mans the unit's guns, and the Onager can be outfitted for several battlefield roles, with the tank-destroying neutron laser, the infantry-pounding twin-linked heavy phosphor blaster, or the Icarus array to take aim at aircraft. Dunecrawlers are equipped with a powerful overlapping force field, and the shield becomes far stronger the more Dunecrawlers are in the same area, even able to repel the blasts of the mightiest enemy weapons. So here we have a datasheet for the Onager Dunecrawler, with credit to the excellent Warhapedia. Onagers are of course a heavy support choice for Codex Adeptus Mechanicus, and at base they'll cost you 100 points when armed with an eradication beamer. You get a fairly resilient profile for that points cost, to be honest. Its movement is 8, weapon skill 5+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 6, toughness 7, 11 wounds, 3 attacks, leadership 8 and a 3+ save. 10 toughness 7 wounds for around about 100 points certainly isn't bad, and it's further equipped with an Amatus force field which gives it a 5+ invul save. Furthermore, you can reroll any invulnerable saving throws of 1 for any Onager Dunecrawler within 6 inches of it, meaning that they will be very slightly more durable when they're in pairs. The Onagers also have the Crawler special rule, meaning that they can only advance d3 inches, but they ignore the -1 to hit penalty for moving and shooting heavy weapons, although I guess that's going to be the case for everyone when 9th edition rolls around. At base it's equipped with an eradication beamer, which is a heavy d6, strength 8, AP-2, damage d3 weapon, and if you happen to be up close and personal with the enemy, then at less than 12-inch range it changes its type to only heavy d3, but the AP is -4 and the damage is d6. A little bit unhelpful that you're not able to pick the fire mode for this thing. Basically you're just going to be locked to a far more dedicated anti-tank weapon if the Onager is up close to the enemy. To be honest, unless you're being pressed by enemies though, if you are already within 12 inches of enemy models then you might well be a bit too close. In terms of main weapons, the Onager can swap out that eradication beamer for any one of 3 options, an Icarus array, neutron laser or twin heavy phosphor blaster. The Icarus array and twin heavy phosphor blaster are exactly the same points, so still 100 points for the Dunecrawler. The Icarus array also has a built-in Cognus heavy stubber to the same thing, and it costs a little bit more, so trading out for that option as a whole will bring you to 107 points. That neutron laser is a 48-inch heavy d3 weapon with strength 10, AP-4 and damage d6, and any rolls of 1 or 2 counters a flat 3 damage instead. This is very much your anti-heavy armour option for the Dunecrawler. Whereas at long range the eradication beamer averages around about 2 wounds on a toughness 7 vehicle, this thing will happily do about 3 or 4 to either a toughness 7 or toughness 8. Getting to buy an extra 2 points heavy stubber is also just added value really, it just gives the tank a little bit more anti-infantry firepower. The twin heavy phosphor blaster I'm afraid just isn't really worth taking at the moment. Heavy 6, strength 6, AP2 and ignore cover really isn't too bad, but unfortunately the Icarus array just does what it does, but slightly better, and Castellan robots certainly get a lot more heavy phosphor blaster shots for the same points. That Icarus array is an interesting option. It's basically consisting of 3 different guns, all of which kind of have the anti-air type targeting rules, where they add 1 to their hit roll against things that can fly, and subtract from it if they can't fly. The first profile is the Daedalus missile launcher, which is a 48-inch heavy one-shot, strength 7, AP-3, damage d6, so very proficient at taking out toughness 6 flyers, and will certainly chip in against toughness 7 vehicles. Next there's the Gatling rocket launcher, which is heavy 5, strength 6, AP-2, damage 1, so pretty much similar to a heavy phosphor blaster except it doesn't ignore cover, and it's better at targeting air. Finally we have a twin Icarus autocannon, heavy 4, strength 7, AP-1, damage 2, again with the modifiers for hitting against fly. Overall, in terms of damage output, This thing completely reigns supreme against toughness 6 vehicles, and it's pretty comparable to the neutron laser even if they can't fly. Against most toughness 7 vehicles, it will outcompete the neutron laser if they can fly, but not if they can't, and unfortunately it's just nowhere near as good against toughness 8. It is worth noting that even with lower ballistic skill, it does have the highest number of shots of any of the weapons here, so it's generally still going to be the best against infantry. Now, one of the advantages of the Icarus array is that you can take a broad spectrum data tether for this tank, and then you can use the Protector Doctrina Imperative stratagem, which will give it +2 to hit, so even if you're targeting non-fly things, you can still be hitting on 2s if you're willing to sacrifice a command point. It can give you one extra way of turning extra command points into extra damage output early in the game. One of the reasons I really quite like the Icarus array is that it now has excellent synergy with the Mars Forge World. Basically, if you take Call to be able to reroll all hits, you'll be able to reroll all those 1s, 2s and 3s if you are targeting ground. And with the Mars specific doctrine, both of those Strength 7 guns will get to Strength 8, which is just an amazing damage output breakpoint, as it means that you'll be wounding Toughness 4 on 2s, Toughness 7 on 3s, and Toughness 8 on 4s. This thing is just so much better with Mars and Core compared with most other Forge Worlds. Talking of other options for the Dunecrawler, it can take a Cognis Heavy Stubber for 2 points, on top of all of its main weapons, and I think that you certainly should take this. 2 points for 3 Strength 4 shots is a bit of a no-brainer really. Finally, as we mentioned, it can either take a broad spectrum data tether or smoke launchers. The data tether is particularly good if you're using some friendly infantry nearby, so it can be pretty handy for a bit more of a combined arms approach, particularly as large units of servitors or something can be a bit more prone to running away. If you've got no infantry and you absolutely have no intention of using the Protector Doctrina Imperative stratagem, then smoke launchers aren't an unreasonable pickup, but basically if you are taking them, then you're sort of banking on one turn it not having any targets to shoot at, so you're happy to just to pop them for -1 to hit, rather than doing your normal damage output. Finally, for special rules, it also has Canticles of the Omnissiah. This thing will get a lot out of Shroud's Arm or rerolling 1s to hit, and you'll certainly get a fair bit out of Mars's Canticle for the Icarus Ray and the Heavy Stubber, and the Lucius one to take it to a 4+ invul, potentially rerolling 1s as well if you have multiple. Finally, it also has the Explode special rule, being a 6-inch explosion that showers nearby units in D3 mortal wounds. Overall, I think that the Onager is a solid battle line unit for the Skitarii. It's both pretty tough and packs a reasonable amount of offensive punch, and it has plenty of synergies, as we'll come on to in a second. So, first of all, the choice that you can make for the Onager is your choice of Forge World. We've already mentioned that Mars is pretty excellent for shooting synergy buffs, particularly with the extra strength boost on that Icarus array, though it is also pretty excellent on the Eradication Beamer as well, meaning that it'll be far stronger against toughness 8 vehicles. Call is also pretty great to have around for the Icarus array as well. Lucius can help keep the Onagers a little bit safer from -1 AP weapons, which occasionally can be relevant with things like autocannons. And as we mentioned before, the +1 to invul saves Canticle that they can get is really quite powerful on these guys, as a 4+ invul save vehicle is just really quite hard to shift. Synergies is always a decent shout on gunline units with -1 to hit at long range. Again, these tanks are just going to be extra irritating to remove, particularly as you could be stacking their -1 to hit Shroud's Arm for a 2+ save, and also getting that 5+ invul as well, making them exceptionally annoying to remove, particularly when you're healing them with Tech Priests. And their unique Canticle isn't useless either. Plea of the Veiled Hunter can allow you to fall back and shoot at -1 to hit, which could be an excellent option if your Onager line does get tagged in close combat and you're not able to shoot them in close combat as per the 9th rules when they come out. For me, these are the main book Forge Worlds that I want to be looking at. I think the rest are fairly marginal gains for the Onagers. In terms of custom Forge Worlds though, that Data Horde Forge World is always pretty good for vehicles. It gives them a 6+ Feel No Pain type save, which is basically a flat 20% durability increase versus pretty much most incoming fire. In terms of secondaries, there is one that can give you +1-inch move to the Onager Dunecrawlers, but I wouldn't really bother with this one. Frankly, movement 8 is pretty reasonable already. I don't think you're going to get much out of going to movement 9. The one I'd be tempted to go for their secondary is the one that allows vehicles to heal 1 wound at the start of each of your turns, meaning that they'll both be harder to kill and also regenerate wounds as well as the healing that you can do with your Tech Priests, obviously unless you're using one of the other ones for another strategy elsewhere in your army. In terms of characters and leaders, there's always the standard Admech shooting castle type characters, either Call or Tech Priest Dominus for re-rolling some hits, plus of course repairing them when they get a bit shot up. You can use a Manipulus for a little bit of extra movement, or maybe some extra range to the weapons, which could potentially be relevant on the various 36-inch guns that this thing has. And perhaps Daedalus from Blackstone Fortress to be able to nominate enemy units within 24 inches to give them +1 to hit. In terms of the standard Admech shooting castle at the moment, I'd most certainly be considering those Holy Order Warlord traits as well. In particular for the Onagers, the Major Swan that gives them extra hits on 6s is just excellent value for 1 command point to buy in, and the ones that can give you extra AP on 6s to hits and at half range shooting are also pretty excellent as well. At least rules as it stands, you can buy in all 3 of these should you really want to, and the Onagers really are a good unit for making a shooting castle with due to their long range and overlapping invul save synergy. In terms of stratagems that we can use on the Dunecrawlers, they tend to have fairly middling value, as they are big shooty battle tanks, but they are only 100-point battle tanks, so you're only buffing so much firepower compared with using stratagems on huge units of Iron Strider Ballistarii, or huge units of Castellan robots for example. We've already mentioned what I think is probably the best stratagem for them, the Protector Doctrina Imperative. As we said, with a broad spectrum data tether, it can give you hitting on 2s with an Icarus array, and if you're Mars and blazing away with strength 8 missiles and autocannon shots, that's going to be a pretty powerful jump. Otherwise, Machine Spirit Resurgent can be pretty handy to get them hitting on full profile again for a turn. Again, could be particularly handy if you are in your last bracket. And if it does look like the Onager is going down, then don't forget you always have the option of transforming Adeptus Mechanicus vehicles into bombs. You could potentially have your Onager walk forward and charge into combat with something that you know is going to kill it, solely for the purpose of using Machine Spirit's Revenge to shower all the enemy units with D3 mortal wounds each, if that's better than just having a 1 wound Onager alive or something. So in terms of fielding Onagers in game, currently my favourite loadouts are the Icarus Array and the Neutron Laser. I actually think that probably the Icarus Array is strongest, but I really want to be using it in the Mars Forge world and have Call about, just so it's not going to be absolutely rubbish when it's targeting things like ground-based vehicles and infantry. If you're not Mars and aren't using that Canticle every turn, then I'd say probably the Neutron Laser is the strongest for some dedicated long-range anti-tank fire support. As I said, I'd always take the Heavy Stubber, and out of the 2 I'd typically go for the broad spectrum data tether, just in case I really wanted to use the Protector Doctrina Imperative, maybe to help counter a -1 to hit modifier, where you could even be hitting at -1 vehicles on a 2+ with this when at full profile. In game, Onagers are just going to be one of your core castle units, along with things like Scorpius Disintegrators and Castellan robots. They're just fine to be loitering around in your deployment zone, laying down heavy firepower every turn, being pretty resistant to enemy return firepower with their defensive buffs. I think that actually one of their main weaknesses in terms of being a castle unit like this is that their base is really quite large, so you might struggle to fit too many of them too close to all of your character bubble, so they might compete for space a little bit more than, say, Scorpius tanks. However, if you can, in general I think they want to be clustered around said characters, well screened from any enemy infantry threats or other incoming things that are going to be wanting to tie them up. It's super relevant in 8th when you can't fall back unless you're Stygies, but I think that's still going to be pretty relevant in 9th as well, even when you can fire your guns into close combat. Particularly things like Neutron Laser Onagers just aren't going to be able to clear a tying up infantry squad, and they could stop you from shooting at tanks. When in game, I'd remember that they have a pretty reasonable movement characteristic. If you say you had 3 of these and 3 Scorpius Disintegrators around a shooting castle, then you can actually move it really quite far every single turn. The Onagers can all move 8 inches, and the Scorpiuses can move even further, and none of them take any penalty to moving or firing when they're firing with heavy weapons. In terms of shooting, I'd typically be wanting to fire with neutron lasers pretty early in the turn. Just with D3 shots and D6 damage, they do have the potential of rolling really quite high, but also the potential for getting absolutely no damage output. They're very swingy, which usually means that you best want to fire them early and just target some fairly intact units, just in case you happen to roll very high and just nuke the unit in one round of shooting. I myself have had the joy of losing entire vehicles to one shot of an Onager's neutron laser. D6 damage just has the potential to roll very high, so it's well worth giving you a chance of being able to do that. Typically I would remember that you have the stratagems available, but be aware that they're not going to be the biggest increase in damage output compared with other ones in the Admech Codex. I think they're only necessarily in very niche cases, say when you absolutely need one last Onager to finish off a flyer or something, and you need every chance to make that happen, rather than just saying I'm just going to use Protector Imperative every single turn on my Icarus array. In terms of competitors, basically the Onagers are going to be competing against things like the Scorpius tanks, and also the Castellan robots, just for in terms of a backfield fire support unit. In general, the Castellans do a bit more of an anti-infantry fire role with those fire support heavy phosphor blasters. As we said, if you want heavy phosphor, you're better off taking them than the Onagers in my opinion. Compared with the Scorpius tanks, I'd say that they do fill a very similar battlefield role, but that doesn't mean that you can't just take 3 Scorpius and 3 Onagers. For me, just on paper, it looks like the Scorpiuses have a little bit heavier fire support, and also the option to act as artillery as well with those energy cannons, but they're just not quite as tough point for point as the Onagers are both cheaper and pack that 5+ invul save that can also be re-rolled on 1s. I'm sure at some point hopefully we'll get round to doing a bit of a comparison between the Scorpius and the Onagers. just to see what the numbers say about their damage output against a fair few targets. So if there's any tricks that I've missed or I've made any mistakes in the video, then please let me know down in the comments below, or if there's anything else with the Onager Dunecrawlers that you think could be relevant when playing a game. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics for plenty more strategy videos coming out pretty much every day, including a lot more to come for the Adeptus Mechanicus. If you'd like to support the channel and you were thinking about buying some model soldiers of some sort in the near future, I'd just like to mention my Element Games affiliate link for people who live in the UK down in the video description below. Basically, Element Games is a discount retailer that does something like 10 to 20% off various 40k products, and if you buy anything from them after clicking the link in the video description, then a little bit of the money goes to help support Auspex Tactics, and it doesn't cost you any more at time of checkout. So if you were thinking about picking up an Onager Dunecrawler, or indeed any other 40k stuff, then this can be a way to help support the channel without costing you any more. There's also a very similar Amazon link for people in the USA and Canada. Amazon stock basically all of Games Workshop's products, so if you were thinking about buying some model soldiers, if you click the link, then that can be a way to support the channel, again costing you no more at time of purchase. A big thank you to you guys who have been using these links. It certainly helps justify spending all this time making videos about Warhammer 40k Tactics. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.